Hello. So today on the Surviving the Human Experience podcast, we're very blessed and excited to have our special guest with us. We have Mr. Barry Jessurun, who has many gifts and talents. He lives in Pomfret, Connecticut with his family currently. He's been managing and working with young people by choice since he himself was a young person, which he's still young. I could tell just by looking at you, not a day over 21. He approaches business with a passion, a keen sense of quality, and an innate sense of hospitality. He's a Tai Chi practitioner for health and balance and uses the principles of this martial arts discourse in his management principles. He's also an avid squash player and plays and coaches at a local private school. He's been in the hospitality and service business since 1978 and management since 1982. And in 1989, he opened a small cafe in Pomfret, Connecticut with his family, which started out as a 16-seat country cafe, and it's grown over the years into 4 diverse restaurants that serve thousands of customers every week. In 2015, he created Green Valley Hospitality, a restaurant management company, to manage the fiscal management and marketing aspects of his 4 businesses that are serving the northeastern Connecticut area. He is the president and CEO of Green Valley Hospitality. He's the co-founder, designer, and co-owner of the Vanilla Bean Cafe in Pomfret, which I saw on your shirt. You have the Vanilla Bean Cafe, so I think we're there today. 85 Main and Putnam, Dog Lane Cafe and Stores, and Fenton River Grill in Mansfield. All 5 businesses combined currently employ over 170 people in both full and part-time capacities. And his focus has always been on creating a safe, welcoming, and dynamic environment, and one that attracts and retains both employees and customers. All of his restaurants have won awards and write-ups in publications such as the New York Times and National Geographic. He also has a recipe in the National Cookbook, Killer Chili. And then 3 of the restaurants have been featured on television shows. So Barry was one of 3 major television networks on 3 major television networks in 2019 when celebrating his 30 years in business, doing cooking demonstrations and promoting his restaurants. So what's really exciting and what we're going to talk about today is his book, The Drunkard's Path, because he also is an author and released his book in 2021. And in that book, he focuses on career, business, and starts basically sharing life guidance and coaching on his 4 decades of management and the hospitality industry. So without further ado, welcome, Barry.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, very excited as well. So today we're going to explore a myriad of your business angles to include entrepreneurship, leadership, career growth, and development. We want you to walk us through what it means to create a self-altruistic you and share how that strategy and mindset, that you discuss in The Drunkard's Path, which I have right here. It was a fantastic book. I absolutely loved it. Couldn't put it down. I had the friends and families reading it as well. So let's get the conversation started. I want to first start out by asking you, when I saw the title, Drunkard's Path, I honestly pictured a drunk guy walking down the street. It's like, this is how life is, right? You're just walking aimlessly, zigzagging. But I want you to talk to us a little bit about the book title, because clearly that's not what it meant. And I learned that after getting a few chapters in.
Yeah, so trying to come up with another kind of self-help book or career book title is really hard. There's just a lot of them out there. And because I wasn't going on to become best-selling author and have my book in every bookstore in America, I was playing around with all different kinds of names I thought might work. And one day I just happened to notice a quilt in my house, and it's composed of stitches that make it into this really cool book. And the stitches are called The Drunkard's Path, right? And the thing about the Drunkard's Path stitch is that it's not easy to do. And if you're a beginner, you're certainly not going to do it right away. But once you have done it for a while and you step up and you learn how to do this particular stitch, a whole new space of design possibilities in quilting opens up for you. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's what I teach. You're a new employee, step up, learn something new, do the harder thing, say yes to that, right? And a whole new space of possibilities is going to open up for you in your job and your career path. So I'm like, oh my God. And then when you think about your career, from when you're 60 or 70 years old and you look back on it, do we all walk a straight line through our life and our careers? It's not, we all actually walk our own drunkard's path through life. So
Yes.
it's a career guide that looks at it from, both directions. And
Makes complete sense.
that's where the title comes from. But yeah, it's a bit of a shock title, and yeah, sometimes I get some questions that don't have
Yeah.
career, but that's okay.
Like myself, I walked in the restaurant. I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "This is an awesome place. I loved it." I went up to the Vanilla Bean and I saw all of the motorcyclists coming in and wandering in. And I said, "Drunkard's Path. Okay, this looks fun." And then I was shocked. I was like, quilting. That's a very unique analogy. I love it. And it's so true. Like you said, we don't take a straight line in our career paths. A lot of times we zigzag, we deter. Sometimes it's linear and then you jump up. And so it's perfect. I love that.
And that's okay. That's what you should expect.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about selfish altruism. You talk about it in your book. So for those who didn't get a chance to read it yet, I'm sure they're going to grab a copy after they listen to the episode. If they're not familiar with this term, can you just share what you mean by it and how you interpret that and translate it in your case?
Yeah, so I first came across the term in a book I was reading in the probably the mid 90s. It was a book by Richard Dawkins called The Selfish Gene. And it's basically about how we have gone through evolution, and how from a gene level and from a cellular level, if the genes act in a selfishly altruistic way, like to take care of themselves, right? Because I need to be here, but I also need to take care of others because I can't do this alone, right?
Right.
So from a biological perspective, right down to the cellular level, that's kind of how we operate. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's what I do on the macro level.
Mm.
I do all these things that I do, all the things you talked about at the beginning. I do them because I want to do them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do them alone. And I need to surround myself with people who want to do them and can do them with me. But I also have to do them in communities, right?
Mm.
That also want me there, and that I need to give back to those communities to help. And any really good business model always includes giving back to the community in some way, shape, or form. And so selfishly altruistic me is like, I'm doing this because I want to, but I'm also doing it for all these other myriad of reasons.
I love it. You got everybody joining the party. That's perfect. So you talk about in your book, you're a big fan of the Four Agreements. And I know we talked about it when we met as well. So for those who haven't read it already, the Four Agreements is by Don Miguel Ruiz. And you reference it often. And you talk about applying it in your business models and even sharing it with some of your young people working for you. So let's talk about the Four Agreements. So for those who aren't familiar, give us the rundown and why did you adopt the principles from there in your model?
One of the things that we always did when we're working with people in the hospitality industry is they have to deal with other people. And we used to call it desensitivity training, right?
Okay.
They're going to come in with whatever their problem is. Your job is to stay true to what we're supposed to do and don't take on their problem. Stay true to your own story of hospitality and care, right?
Right.
And so teaching our young people how to do that is what we've always done. After I read the Four Agreements, I was like, oh my God, it's like, don't take things personally, which is the first of the Four Agreements. So we, instead of calling it desensitivity training, we just started calling it the four, don't take things personally from the Four Agreements. And then we bought lots and lots of those books and we give them out to all our young managers to read, right? So the four agreements are: be impeccable with your word. Right? It's like, just whatever you say, that's what you're creating around you. Don't take things personally. Always do your best, and don't make assumptions. And I always interpret that: don't act on ungrounded assumptions.
Right.
Those four things, while they sound very, very easy, it's like, oh yeah, great, and you can hang them on your mirror and put them, hang them in the bathroom, wherever you put them. Unless you practice them, unless you engage with them, unless you talk to other people about them and build them into your daily language and practices, they're just something you read and forgot about because the cat had to go to the vet and the car got a flat tire and oh my God, there's this meeting coming up, and and that's what it is. I mean, as humans, we tend to be, we read things and we go, wow, this is great, this is a life-changing book. And then life happens and we forget that we need to really engage in those things that are meaningful to us. And so
Hmm.
when you find anything that's like that, the more people you can get involved to talk about it, and incorporate it, the better. I've talked to thousands of people. I talked to a lot of college age students and different adults for different things. And I hold that book up and I say, has anybody read it? And usually there's a small number of people in it, and usually one or two people are like, great book. And then I just go, well, what are they?
Yeah.
And they go, what or what? And I say, stall, you know? And I've had four or maybe five people who can list all four and they just rattle them off because
Hmm.
they made it a practice. Most everybody
Mm.
else, they're getting like two. I spoke to a library group,
Hmm.
they'd all read the book,
Right.
and they couldn't get more than two.
Yeah.
And it's,
And I think it probably has a lot to do with how much information we're consuming nowadays, especially our young folks. They're being fed so much at one time, right? There's the information coming in from the cell phone, there's the video games, there's the educational material they're consuming. And so you bring up a really great point. If you're not doing like an application process of something, it's just another book that goes on the bookshelf. It was something nice to read. You may revisit it later in life. But if it's not a normal practice, then it's very easy to just kind of take that information, push it to the back of the brain, and keep going.
yeah, but I read in your book, you did that. You took these things on and you made them a practice and you made them
Yes.
work for you.
Yes.
That's what stood out for me in your writing and how you did it. But that's
Yes.
why it worked, because you engaged it and you
Hmm.
made it part of your life. And
Yes.
and that's the thing we all look. I do it too. I read stuff and I go, oh my god, and then I forget all about it.
Right.
But this particular one, we really took on, and as you point out, I refer to it a lot in my book.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so funny that you mentioned desensitivity training when we're in such a sensitivity training focused world at the moment, right? But it's so true because a lot of times, and I've shared this in some of my other episodes, when you're encountering somebody, and you discuss it too in your book, when you're encountering somebody and they're not the friendliest or they react in a way that's less than expected, sometimes it's very easy to get caught up in the, oh my gosh, like how dare that person speak to me this way. And a lot of people are just living through their own lens. It's their own traumas, it's their own experience, it's all the baggage that they have that has nothing to do with you. So I love how you incorporate that and instill that in your young folks working for you, because it's very easy to just say, person was so mean. I can't believe they said that to me. And then you're going to react. So learning how not to be reactive is so huge, because people are very emotional are
Yeah.
creatures that just kind of act out in different places. And one of the spaces that happens is the hospitality industry, because people want to be served and they feel entitled. And then you have a whole nother issue.
And the overall problem is that it's all stacked against us.
Mhm.
Literally, from when we're kids to when we go into kindergarten and grade school, it's always somebody else's fault, right? I feel this way. He's making me angry. She's making me sad. We get into high school and we learn more about that. We get into college and we learn about the laws and how they're written and created. It's
Mhm.
never it's never about that. It's you. You're the
Right.
problem. You have to fix what's inside. What's out there is just a trigger and an interpretation, and
Mhm.
yet everything is stacked against us, pointing in the other direction as if it's the truth, which is why we all suffer.
Yes. I love that. That's such an aha moment when people understand that and they realize it's me that has to do the work. And the triggers, exactly what you said about the triggers is huge, right? You come across somebody. I had this conversation with one of my teenagers' friends this weekend who was having issues with another friend. And I said, did you guys ever have a confrontation? Was there an issue? And he said, no, I just don't understand why this person dislikes me. I said, did you ever think that maybe whatever that person sees in you is something they dislike about themselves, and it triggers them and it creates this projection? And he said, I never thought about that. I said, yeah, here's a
Because
book.
we're not taught to think that way.
No,
We're
not at all.
literally taught that it's always somebody else's fault. And the
Yeah.
laws are always written in a way to go after the people with the money.
Mhm.
They don't go after the people who are wrong.
Right.
They go after the people with
Absolutely.
money. And that just sets us all up for thinking everything is somebody else's fault. And it puts us all into a place of victimhood, which is a place of zero power,
Zero power. I
right?
love that you point that out. Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
Because you gave everything to everybody else. You allowed your feelings, your emotions, your next steps, your thoughts, your energy to be tied up in somebody else's space. Meanwhile, they've moved on. They don't even care about you. They've gone about their day and they've already ruined somebody else's day, right? And you're sitting here still angry 10 years later in therapy on a couch somewhere talking about the time that this guy came into the restaurant and was upset with you. Oh my gosh, it's so true.
It's not the discount though that something does happen, right? On a biological level, something is happening and you have to acknowledge it. And in many cases, you have to feel it and get through it, right? And
Right.
some of us have more difficult things than others in our lives. So I don't want to discount the fact that yes, you're going to feel something. Like when you go outside and it's raining, you're going to get wet.
Right.
But the decision on how you're going to act always lies with you and not with the rain or with the
Yes.
jerk or with whatever, right?
Yes.
But it doesn't mean you're not going to feel something, right?
Yes.
It doesn't mean you're
Agreed.
process that. So I don't want to like, take that away. That's important
Yeah.
because we're emotive things and we feel things, and we have to feel them.
Yes. And, in one of our workshops that I do with Denise, we always talk about moving through and not attaching to. So moving through those emotions, letting whatever's happening at the moment happen and go through and not get stuck. So you want to not attach to it. You just kind of watch it like it's a movie. It's happening. It's over. What did I learn? What did I choose not to take from this? And keep going. Or I always used to say, this is only temporary. So when I found myself in very unpleasant situations, I would sit there and say, this is only temporary, just like the rain. It might be raining right now, but it'll be dry in a couple hours. I'll be good to go. And that also helps as well. So I love the section of the book where you ask the reader the question, who do you work for? And it's such a basic question. It seems like it'd be a real simple answer, but yet you provided a much deeper, more profound insight into that response. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, so culturally, it's the same thing, right? We're always told that we work for somebody else. We work for the McDonald's, we work for the state, we work for whatever, you name it, the government, right? And the problem with that, in my way of thinking, is it's an easy cop out, right? Well, this is only temporary, or it's only this job. It's not what I really want to do, so I'm not going to fully apply myself. And so what happens is you get into a really, really well-practiced way of being mediocre. At the time you get to the job you really want, you've practiced being mediocre for so long, you're good at it.
Wow.
When you go through your life thinking that you're working for yourself and your
Mhm.
future value, right? The future value you're creating for yourself and the people around you, you're just going to learn more. You're just going to step up and do more. You're doing it because you're doing it for you, right?
Mhm.
And if you
Mhm.
go through every job you've got with the mindset of like, who you're there for is you and the future you're creating, the rest of the stuff kind of doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the other one, to me, it's just a self-defeating conversation. You're going to
Mhm.
cop out, you're going to blow days off, you're not going to do the work the right way. And all you're doing is creating a habit, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And we don't want to have habits like that, really, is what it comes down to. And so,
So it's interesting that you say that because as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the accountability piece, right? So would you say that you find if somebody gets into that space and they feel mediocre, well, I work for them. It's really the company's problem. Do you feel like there's a difference in level of accountability between somebody, for example, like yourself, who's the business owner, who says my name is attached to this, versus the employee who chooses to say, well, I just work for such and such company. That's their problem.
right. And they just build that as a muscle. So if
Hmm.
they ever go out and start to work for themselves or start to work in a career where the possibilities are there for them, they may not be offered to them because they haven't practiced a mindset and a way of being that just allows
Mm.
them to do that automatically. Like
Hmm.
work like you're the owner. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Invest, make it work. I mean, I started having this mindset when I was a teenager because it made no
Hmm.
sense to me that I worked for whoever I worked for. And I'll tell you, man, I learned all kinds of stuff. I got promotions and to a certain degree, I made my own schedule and my own job because I became that guy,
Mm.
right?
I love that. Yeah. I can remember very early on in my career having a mentor. He was a senior executive and he came to us and there were a bunch of us who were interns. And I'll never forget this. He said, always behave in a manner where you think the camera is always on. And I never forgot that. I'm like, Yeah, the camera is always on. It goes to the same, having the integrity and the respect and honesty to always, even when people aren't looking, do what's right. That same concept. But I never forgot that because there are always people watching, and there's people watching when you least expect it. And that might be that next promotion opportunity for you. That might be that next entrepreneurial gig for you. Whatever it is you're doing in life, somebody might notice or see you. But if you're acting and behaving in such a way that it's like, I'm just here to do my job and go home, you don't stand out. You don't stick out. You're not
You,
memorable.
you don't create the possibility because you're
Right.
not working to create that.
Right.
Whereas if
Right.
you are always working in that way, like you pointed out, you do get noticed. People
Yes.
go, oh my God. Now, at the same time, you will work for people who will use you and take advantage of you.
Mhm.
And you do,
Absolutely.
right? And you got to realize when that's going on. And what I tell people is like, use them back.
Mhm.
You
I
know what I
love
mean?
that.
Like if they're going to pay for your education, then let them pay for your education, even though they're using you. But well, you're not paying for the education. There's
Yeah.
ways you can do that.
Mhm.
And as long as the place isn't really toxic, right? I always say get out of toxic places. But for the most part, yeah, you'll be in positions where people they don't care about you, and
Mhm.
they think they can replace you with the next person, and that's okay. That's kind of their problem. The way I look at it, your problem is to just keep doing the best you can in every moment of now, because in the long run, it just creates value.
Makes sense. And I also have shared with people that I've mentored throughout the years as well in the career space that we're often put in those situations and those positions to learn a lesson. So if you are in that realm where you're growing as a leader, sometimes you need to experience the really awful ones to realize I don't want to be like that. I'm not going to treat somebody like that. So treating it as a space of a lesson and then getting yourself the heck out.
Yeah,
Once
and
you learn the lesson, get out.
as an entrepreneur, I mean, a lot of how I developed how we run things has a lot to do with what I learned not to do
Hmm.
from a lot of the people I worked for, a lot of the places I worked, right? As well as what to do. So yes, like you say, they are lessons,
Hmm.
and learn from them and work with them and develop yourself through all of it.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff. So you have an employment workflow circle in your book. I loved it. I got all excited. I love diagrams. I'm a very visual person. And so you talk about the employee, the customer, the coworkers, and the owner. So I want you to talk a little bit about your workflow circle and how it's employed in your space.
Yeah, so it starts with the conversation we just had, which who do you work for, right? And if you can walk into a place and you're there for you, well, that's the beginning of it, and it's only the beginning of it because there's a lot more going on, right? And so the way I work people through this is like, well, okay, you're here, you've got this job, it's working for you, and your short-term and long-term story is like, well, who do you work for next?
Mhm.
I mean, it's like, well, there's a job here, you're working, you're
Right.
obviously trying to make something happen. And I don't give them the answers. A lot of the young people I work with, I walk them through it with questions
Okay.
because you have to use your mind to think about things. You're more apt to remember
Mhm.
these things than if I just sit there and point it and go around the circle. Okay. So that's what I do. So I'm not going to do that with you now. I'll just go around. Okay.
Great.
So who's next is the customer because they have the money. It's
Mhm.
as simple as that. We created this offer, right? And because these customers exist, you have a job that you can
Mhm.
work on your own career with, but it starts with you. But the customers are really the ones who come next because, well, without them, we got nothing. Okay. And then on the next of that, I go noontime, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So at 6 o'clock, it's the coworkers because you can't do anything alone. We as human beings cannot do anything alone. We need people. And the main thing is you need the right people.
Mhm.
Right? Our job as owners is to keep on hiring the right people. And when we can, get rid of the wrong people.
Mhm.
Right? So we're always trying to do that. So the next one is us. Right? And then it goes back to the employee. And the arrows in that circle point in all directions because myself as the owner, I'm always working for you and your coworkers to take care of the customer.
Mhm.
Always. And then my question is like, well, how do I work for you? Right? I say that to my employees because I'm working for you, and I help them find answers to that, which is, we schedule in a fair way, we pay you in a fair way, your check doesn't bounce, it always comes on the same day. We
Mhm.
always fix the equipment that breaks. I mean, you name it, we're always trying to do things to make their jobs easier so they can be better off taking care of each other as well
Mhm.
as the customer. Right? The less breakdowns they deal with because we're taking care of it, the easier it is for them to do their jobs. And that's why that isn't a circle, because
Mhm.
we as the owners or the people who make it possible are always working for them to take care of the customer.
So what I love about what you said there is you make the connection between what your role is, what their role is, and how everything fits together in that circle. So often I think people go into jobs and the boss says, okay, here's the job you're doing, but there isn't that two-way relationship. It's that hierarchy structure that says, I'm the boss and you just do it because that's what I told you to do. But you're creating a relationship, a dynamic that's an interactive exchange, which shows somebody how they fit into the big picture. That it's not just you and you doing this job alone. You impact the customer, you impact your coworkers, you impact the flow of the entire business. I think a lot of times people don't get the opportunity to make that connection or have leaders that create that connection for them. So that's a huge piece. I just wanted to, foot stomp you on that one because I think that's missing in a lot of the environments that I've seen in the leadership space. So
yeah, and we've been doing that for decades. It went into a circle probably about 24, 25 years ago. Before that, it was a hierarchy structure with the employee at the top and the owner at the bottom supporting the whole thing.
Oh, how neat. That's
right?
neat as well.
And then I found this action workflow circle. I'm like, oh my God, that works so much better, right? And so I changed the conversation around to show that we're also included in this continuous transaction loop, right? And I got rid of the hierarchy structure. But I love the old one because the employee was at the top of the hierarchy.
I like that too. I had not seen that one, but I think that's awesome because again, it's usually the flip reverse and people are looking going, I'm just the little peon down here and I'm replaceable and I'm just, a cog in the wheel sometimes. And so this places the importance on the employee, which creates, I would say, a greater need for accountability and connection and all the things that make somebody feel valued in a workplace, which is something that's starting to miss in a lot of our workplaces.
But fortunately, it is in a lot of
episode in itself, right? Yeah. So there's a quote in your book that stood out to me, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about this one too. So you said, once we care about what others think of us and we chase after their approval and validation, we take everything they say and do personally. We become their prisoner and slave. That was profound. That was deep. So let's talk about it.
Well, it goes back to don't take things personally. It's as simple as that. When we're trying to satisfy things outside of us, it's the same as letting things outside of us affect who we are and the trajectory we're on, right? And decide for us how we're going to feel. Like it's giving up power. It's just a different way of saying it.
So you have a lot of young folks that come into your workspace. So you may be their first job, you may be their second or third. Do you find that when they arrive on your doorstep and they walk in and they're like, I'm ready, I'm here for it, what do I need to do? Do you feel like they're entering your workspace with that mentality? Are you having to do a lot of unlearning and relearning?
Yeah, so my unofficial job title is Chief Storyteller. Okay, so my job is to continually tell the story over and over and over again, to hold that story and support that story. And as these new employees come into this, they don't have experience in other jobs, or if they do, it's very limited, and they haven't really formed a solid idea of what a job really is.
Okay.
So my job is to create that story so that they go, yeah, that works for me. I'll do that. Now, the problem is when I have a new employee that comes in and they're 35, they already have a preconceived idea of how it all is supposed to work. They have their blinders on. They operate in a mood of certainty. And they are so hard to get through because they think they've got it all figured out. And as you and I both know, you never have it all figured out. You're always learning new things and adapting new things. Like when I changed the hierarchy structure to a circle, this happens all the time. And so my job with the older people is to try and remove their blinders and put them back in a mood of wonder, which we all lose, right? And with the young people, it's just creating an environment that's just so welcoming and supportive that they just go, oh, this is how it works. And we literally have employees that have worked for us, decades ago that come back and they say, yeah, you guys, this is my favorite job I've ever had. And that's awesome. What we're supposed to do is to create, my job is to create a place where the employees want to be. Because if I can create a place where they want to be and I can tell a good cohesive story about what our offer is, they're just gonna do it.
Right. Right.
You
And
know,
you're actually making it easier for employers in the future, should they continue to be employees and not entrepreneurs, because they have a good foundation.
hopefully, right?
Yes. So we
That's
thank you for that.
that's the story, right? One of
Yes.
the pieces, and I think yeah, it's in the appendix of the book. It's called Our Hidden Agenda.
Mhm.
It's a piece I wrote, I don't know, a decade ago or more. And you know, we may look like we're a restaurant, but we're really a young person development agency,
Mhm.
you know, and that's where we put our focus,
Mhm.
right? The
Yeah.
story of quality and service and all of that, it exists in the restaurant and we work at that. But again, it goes back to my job is to create a place they want to be and help
Mhm.
them grow to be the person they're going to be after they leave me. And when
Yes.
we talk to them about not taking things personally, if they've learned this now as a teenager, that by the time they get to be 35, they might actually be good at it, right? How long does it take to get there?
Mhm. And it's such a perfect introductory space to come into, because you get to experience the rainbow of everything. You get to experience happy customers, irritated customers, unsatisfied customers. You get to see teamwork, you get to see individual contributions. You span across so many different areas. So the playground of experiences already exists. And then you get to build in the lessons, which I think is so cool. I
Yeah, it's
think
like
it's so
working in a
cool.
play lab every day.
Yes, yes, because you're creating things each day. There's a way to make the sandwich. I do know that. I read that part in the book too. There's a way you do it there.
Right.
However, there's room for opportunity, right, to make mistakes and to learn from them and still survive. It's not
Absolutely.
detrimental to their career. Yeah,
Absolutely.
love it. Right. So you also go on to say that you want to be the star of your own story, not a minor part in someone else's story. Big deal there. Loved that. That one stuck out. I had highlighted everywhere in your book. However, I picked a few ones that stuck out to me, saying, so true, because how many times do we end up getting kind of sucked into somebody else's story or playing in the background, or feel like, well, we just have to get up and go and do this? So you changed that motto with this statement. So talk about it.
Well, it's okay to be both, right? You absolutely want to be that lead character in your story, and you're the one who's telling the story, going back to be impeccable with your word. It's like
Mhm.
this is how we create the reality that we encounter, the thoughts we have, the words we use, right? And so if you're working to be that person in your story and you practice it, it's just going to happen. But at the same time, we are literally, you know, extras in hundreds of thousands of people's stories, and that's important too. Like it's
Mhm.
important to be a good extra
Mhm.
and to know
Mhm.
when you are that position. Like it's like leadership. Leaders aren't leaders all the time. Every now and then they have to go, no, today I'm a follower.
Mhm.
And good leaders know when to do that.
Mhm.
See, a lot of leaders think, well, I'm a leader, and they go and they try and lead everything. And oh my God, you know, don't do that.
There's a
Stepping back,
special place on earth for them.
stepping back and knowing, okay, today I'm a follower, you know,
Right.
and it's an important role sometimes, because sometimes being, you know, what is that? You know, the supporting actor,
Mhm.
right? That's
Yes.
an important role. In fact, you get awards for it.
Mhm.
But also, even the minor characters, they're just so important. I mean, that movie scene wouldn't look the same in the coffee shop if there weren't a table of 3 or 4 people in the background sipping coffee and having a conversation the right way,
Mhm.
right? All
Right.
of that is important, and knowing your role in each moment of now is
Mhm.
important. But never lose sight of the fact that it's still your story,
Mm.
and you're the one who's writing it and working to take care of it and build it every day.
Yes. So the ownership goes back to being accountable for yourself, taking control of your own voice, standing in your power, all of those things. I love it. Love it. Love it. So we're going to change gears real quick. Entrepreneurship. As a successful entrepreneur, you write extensively in the book about your experiences and recipes for success. If you had to do it all over again, would you have changed any part of your story?
No, every part of the story of who I am in this moment of now, it's important for me, right?
Mhm.
I learned from things that we did badly, you know.
Mhm.
I learned from mistakes along the way. It's you can't ever go back and change, because when you do that, the outcome is different. And where I am now is I like the outcome and I like the trajectory we're on.
Mhm.
You know, yeah, I no regrets.
Awesome. Yay. That in itself is growth. A lot of people will say, well, I would have changed this and that. And it's like, but you wouldn't be who you are today. So I love it. What was your biggest aha moment along the journey?
Oh man, I think when I realized that I'm important. Wait a minute, this is about me, right? This
Hmm.
is the path I'm on. And one of them was I was 23 years old and I was doing the cultural thing and getting a job with insurance.
Hmm.
And I kind of woke up and went, what the hell are you doing? Like,
Right.
you can really want to do this?
Uh-huh.
So the answer was no. So at 23, I quit my job, broke my lease, moved to New Hampshire, and got a job in a ski area because I wanted to ski,
Hmm.
right? And that was sort of the opening for me. Then I just followed the idea of, well, what do I really want to do, and who do I want to do it with? And that's the path I ended up on, and I kept on building that muscle of taking care
Hmm.
of what story I'm working to create. But it was somewhere I was living in Boston, and it's just like, are you happy? Is this what you want? It's like,
Right.
no, it's not.
No. So when you went through that process, I'm sure, maybe not, but I'm sure there were probably some moments where you kind of sat down and said, was this the right decision? Did you experience that? And if so, no. Okay.
And oddly enough, I almost never do that.
Okay.
And then it's whatever it is, whatever parenting I had, whatever way I grew up, I don't kind of have that reflexive
Mhm.
thought process. Uh,
Okay.
I tend to go, okay, this is what I'm doing. Because, when I think about it rationally, the word if is a complete word of no power.
Mm,
Oh, if only I had done this. Well, that's not helping.
right.
Like, where are we now? What are my
Hmm.
resources? What can I do? Right?
Hmm.
You can't get stuck in the, oh, if only we had done this. It's useless. It's useless conversation, right?
Hmm.
You go back to stuff like that for deepening your learning, but it's always about this moment forward. And for
Mm,
some lucky reason, I've never done that. I don't get caught up in it.
good. So for my listeners out there who are asking the if questions or doubting themselves, just keep going forward, forward motion, forward,
And
not
again,
backwards, not
it goes
sideways.
back to, you still have to, like, if something happened, you still have to feel it, you still have to go through it.
Right.
And different people have to do it in different ways and different levels, and some people have to cry, some people have to go out and
Mhm.
and go for a drive, whatever they have to do, you still have to go and feel it and move through it. But to me, it's always been just one step at a time, keep going. Okay, that didn't work, okay, keep going. And a lot of times, once I think I've decided to do something, I for for good or bad,
Let's
I
do
just
it.
think it's right, and I keep going. You know.
I love it. That's good though.
And
That's
if
a
it's
good
not,
thing.
then I drop it and I go on to something else. I don't go, oh man, that was 3 months of wasted time. It's like, no, I learned stuff from it.
Yeah.
When I made that choice to move, it was like, no, I'm going. Didn't even look back.
Okay, good. So that is helpful. So that's what our folks need to consider when they get challenged in that space. So
Well,
you also go ahead.
yeah, and again, in the appendix of the book, there's that section on affirm. Do you remember that one?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah, so it's accept, right? Accept what's going on. Practice radical acceptance, because this is the moment of now. You can't do anything else about it, right? So you just have to
Mhm.
accept, because once you get into a place of acceptance, you can actually start to do things positive. And usually the next thing is forgive,
Mhm.
right? You've got to forgive the people around you that will put you into that position. You got to forgive yourself, because you're the one who actually was the one who was there, right? And you've got to be able to forgive everybody involved, because once you accept and once you forgive, your space of taking care then opens up. You can actually
Mhm.
start to think rationally about where you are in that moment of time, and then what you need to do to change the situation into something
Mhm.
more positive that aligns with your story, right? And then, the last M of affirm is move on, right?
Mhm.
Don't get stuck in it.
Right.
But and that's the problem with all of us as humans. We tend to go and we get stuck in
Mhm.
certain places.
Mhm.
And yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, and that forgiveness piece is so huge. I think a lot of times people think the forgiveness is for the other person, and it's not. It's
No,
for you. It's so that you can just kind of put it to bed and keep going and not be stuck in that space. Because again, the other person's already moved on. They're already well down the road.
And when we hold grudges or we're angry or we're pissed off at someone, the saying, I think it's attributed to Aristotle, it's like, that's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes.
You know, you're carrying all this weight and it's like it's you the one carrying it. You know?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
Accept, forgive, and keep going.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about, or well, you shared in your bio that you are a Tai Chi practitioner. Tell me, how does that translate into this space? How do you leverage the skills there into your entrepreneurial world?
So Tai Chi has a long history. It's got a story, right? And I act inside the story of Tai Chi, and I move my body inside the story of Tai Chi. It's a somatic practice, right? I move in a way that is smooth and balanced and grounded and centered. Okay. My business and business in general has a long history. Mine has a shorter history, but it's a story and it's a shared story. And my job is to move both somatically and linguistically through that story, so that I am always moving in a smooth and balanced and grounded manner that allows me to take care of that story and myself inside that story in that way. Somatic for Tai Chi, linguistic for business. And the linguistic side, it's simply the story of entrepreneurship, the story of the restaurants I'm in, the story of my family, the story of my community. You know, in every moment of now, am I acting with that story in mind to take care of that story and keep it moving forward in an effective fashion? Okay, so with Tai Chi, right, I might be doing Tai Chi and I might be outside, I might be on the beach and my foot may not go the right way, but I'm still going to do Tai Chi. Okay? In business, there might be a day that, you know, something happens. Maybe somebody falls and sues us, or maybe one of the employees gets mad at another one, and, you know, and something happens. So the idea behind it all is to still stay true and centered to the story and act in a way that takes care of the story. So that's how I use the principles of Tai Chi, both somatically and linguistically, to stay centered as I move through my life.
And that's really important because so many, as you started mentioning, so many things happen throughout the business process and journey that can throw you off the path really quickly and provoke you to react. And so I'm appreciating the fact that you're sharing. This allows you to stay grounded and stay exactly where you're supposed to be, regardless of the chaos around you. You are staying in one space and just able to center yourself. So.
And I still practice, and I'm still, you know, I'm still getting better at it, right? Every day doesn't go that way. Sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I'm sick, sometimes I didn't get enough sleep, right? But I'm always doing my best to stay there, right? You can't always be in center because you just can't, right? And every now and then it's not going to look good or whatever, but the idea is to stay true to it. I don't want to make it sound like, gee, I'm doing this and it's all perfect. It's not.
Right.
What's wrong with it every day? But it's how do I stay true to the story, right? Which is the most important part. And some days my form looks bad, but in some days, some days the restaurant doesn't go as well, you know. But that's okay because that's part of the story. Back to full-on acceptance, but always working from that, you know. Yes. And I want to say one thing about the importance of the story. It's called "Will It Make the Boat Go Faster?" Have you heard of this?
I have not.
So you got to let all your people up there look it up on the internet, okay?
Yeah, enlighten us.
It has to do with the British rowing team, and it was like maybe 20 years ago. The British rowing team was not known for winning. And a new coach came and took over, and he basically said, look, we're just going to change one thing and one thing only. I want you to focus on this one thing. And the one thing was, anything you're going to do, you have to ask yourself just one question before you do it. And it's, will it make the boat go faster? If it's not going to make the boat go faster, don't do it. So that extra pint in the pub probably ain't going to make the boat go faster. That extra half hour in the gym, that might make the boat go faster. So he changed the whole idea of how these people engaged with their life, not just at practice with the boat, but with their whole life. Changed their whole story, and it changed their trajectory because of it. They started thinking about ways to make the boat go faster. You know, and to sum it up, 2 years later, they went on to win gold. And it's turned into this now global thing. There's the book out, there's the internet, they go to businesses, they teach this. You know, it's a very, very simple thing, right? But you got to stay with it.
Yeah. And it gives you something to anchor into and to focus on because there's too many distractions. There's so many distractions nowadays that pull you away from everything. You get caught up in the water cooler talk. You get caught up in the performance appraisal that didn't go so well, or you get caught up in the promotion that you didn't get that you thought you should have gotten. And none of that is productive because none of it's driving us to the goal, which would be what will make the boat go faster. I feel like I'm going to go put that lipstick on my mirror now. I have so many sayings on my mirror at this point, but that's a good one. I like that. That'll motivate me each day. So in an increasingly competitive job market, what would you say right now is the key to retaining high caliber talent? Because this is a problem, right? The job market is saturated at the moment. So what has been your experience and words of wisdom in that area?
So in the industry I'm in, 90% of my people are passing through. Okay? They're high school kids, they're college kids, they're people in between jobs or whatever, and they're passing through, and I know they're passing through. And it's important that I create a good launch pad for them to launch from. Okay? So that's 90% of what we're doing. A very small percentage of it is, yes, retaining the right people. Getting the right people is creating a work environment they want to be in, creating a place where they can also be creative, right? Where what they do and what they think and how they act, it matters, right? And they can put their name on certain things. Like when we're getting, you know, we're getting written about, I'll put somebody else out there to have their picture taken. You know, when menus are being developed, we ask somebody else, hey, what's your input? We have a couple of kids who've been going to Johnson and Wales, and we go, okay, give him the menu, let him do it this whole week. You know, and go ahead. And our job is to support them in doing that. But to me, it's like create a fun environment, create a supportive environment. My way of leading is what's called supportive leadership, right? And again, it goes back, tell the story and then support from behind, you know, because you're the guys who are making this happen, right? And if they have ownership and they have agency inside of that, and you're paying them in a competitive way, you're just going to be more apt to keep people for a longer period of time. Our restaurants tend to keep people, we're above the curves as far as like, you know, retention.
Yeah, it's because you invest in them.
Yeah.
You, even though you know something you said that's important, you know they're passing through. They're like travelers on a journey, but you don't treat them as such. You treat them as individuals who are contributing and you're pouring into, instead of, well, they're only going to be here for a couple of months, so it doesn't matter, I just need them to get the job done. You actually are valuing regardless of, even you just part of your journey, you've decided, hey, I'm working with a community that's going to come and pass through and I'm going to pour into them. That's cool. I like it.
And you know, that didn't start out that way. I mean, to begin with, it was difficult, you know. It's like, you know, I keep training these people, they keep going away and they keep working for other people, you know. And at one point I came to the realization, like, that's my job. Oh my God, that's what I do. I get to really actually do this. And that's when we really shifted our focus to doing that instead of suffering with it.
Right. So we're going to switch over, since we're kind of already segueing into working with youth. So you do work with youth as part of your mission here on Earth. That's your journey. We've established that. And I had the pleasure of seeing you in action at the Vanilla Bean. And I must say, it was very impressive. The way you just move throughout the restaurant, you know your audience, you know your customers, you know your employees. I had no idea you were the owner, honestly, at first. I'm looking all around going, where's the owner? you just jump right in with everybody else, which is so awesome. But you genuinely enjoy and invest in the professional growth and development of your youth. So why did you choose that path? And how do you feel it's changed your life? Because it was a on purpose decision. You clearly made that decision to do that. And that was hard, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of times they say, you know, your path isn't chosen by you, it's kind of chosen for you. And in a way, that's kind of what happened. I mean, I've been in the hospitality industry for a long time. I like it. It's a lot of fun. You're surrounded by a bunch of fun people, you know, and they're always dynamic. A lot of them are always artists or singers. You know, there's always more going on, and they express themselves more, it seems to me. And that's just my narrow lens. It could be true everywhere, but that's my narrow lens. And, we opened this restaurant 35 years ago with my family. And it's like, I didn't really want to do this. I didn't really want to live in Northeastern Connecticut. And I left. I took a brief hiatus because I wanted to spend time in California. And then I came back, and then my sister, who was running it, didn't want to do it anymore. And I thought, okay, well, I'll run it, and we're going to grow it, and then we're going to sell it. And in that time frame, a lot of things happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed to be like, well, this is what I'm doing. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. I found a way to take care of my long-term concerns, right? Which is taking care of my own retirement, taking care of my kids' college education, and finding meaning. Right? And that's what it came down to, is once I really realized that my job is not really that of a restaurateur, but really a place to take care of young people in the direction that they're going with their lives.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, and that's where the book came from. Like, I didn't think I was ever going to write a book. It just wasn't anything. I started writing for me to help me understand things better.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote about them, then I could actually speak well of them. So when I'm working with my managers and employees, that's how the whole writing piece started, is just to be better for me. And then that turned into like a manager manual, and then it turned into more. And then I'm like, okay, wow, I've written a book here. I might as well finish it. And that's where that came from. But it was really, finding the meaning, what it was I was doing. And again, it goes back to selfish altruism and taking care of myself, right? My community, my family, and all of that. And it just makes it valuable and important.
Makes sense. So as your part of your experience working with youth, you spend a lot of time, we talked about this too, fostering an environment that's conducive to their development. You become a trusted mentor. So while you're working with your younger staff, what would you say were the top 3 areas you focused on the most? You saw a theme and you said, these are the 3 areas I've got to focus on, if you had to choose 3.
One of them is definitely the desensitivity training, which we now call Don't Take Things Personally, because that in the book, both the 4 agreements and in mine, is really, really important, because if you're taking things personally, you're a victim and your story really doesn't get to be told, right? So trying to have them at least understand it and work toward that. Look, I know it takes years to do it, right? And I'm basically planting a seed that, like I said, they're going to get good at. If they keep practicing, they'll be good, in 15 or 20 years, right? Because that's how long it takes to practice and get good at this. And like we pointed out earlier, it's stacked against you. But that's really, really important. And I think that goes into working with a team. Like, you need to be on the right team. You need to if someone's not working, find a way to help them to get it, or find a way to help them move on. Right? So those 2 basic things, I think, come up. And the last one is, I think, probably just around trust, right? And integrity. Because, people who are valued are trustworthy, and we assess them as having integrity. And if you have that and you're in a good mood, things are actually just going to work well for you. And the problem, again, we have culturally is like, it's okay to break your promises. And to me, it's not. It goes back to as simple as promising to be on time. Right? That is to me, that's a major promise. And if employees come in and they're late, it's like, okay, you're breaking this one easy promise. Like, how can I trust you to take care of other things? Keep all your promises, or don't make them.
Steve Covey does a lot of work in that space where he writes about the speed of trust. He has an entire program. And I thought it was so important, because trust is kind of the glue that holds it all together in these environments. And if you can't count on your coworker or your employee or your employer to execute their piece of the story, it creates a bad recipe for disaster. Yeah, definitely does. So what words of wisdom would you like to share with our listeners who are either just starting out in their professional careers, maybe they're mid-career? What words of wisdom would you like to give our listeners and the world?
I should have known this question was coming, right?
Yeah. What is your claim to fame? I mean, just what is that message? What is Barry's message?
My my theme when I was a teenager, and it still holds true today, is like learn things, have fun.
Mm,
Like always be in a state of wonder, always looking to learn new things, always, whether you're driving your car or walking or being with people, look for the fun, look for the magic, look for the new things. Don't move through life with certainty. It's not that way. There is nothing at all that's certain. Things are always changing. Our lives in the world are in a constant state of flux, right?
mm,
We want to be open, and it goes back to that. Just learn things. Be open to that, learning things new, and have fun. Because why else are we here,
mm.
right? It seems kind of crazy to be here and be miserable.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people live on autopilot. They get stuck in, as you said, that zone. They've got those blinders on and they're like, got to get up, got to go to work, got to take the kids, got to take the dog, whatever your story is. And they forget to enjoy what's around them, being in the present.
And that's the last piece, right? It's
Yeah.
your narrative, it's your story,
Mhm.
right? If you're not going to write it, if you're not going to tell it, if you're not going to work on it, then you're just going to be a minor character in other people's stories, right? If you have the time, sit down and write about it. Sit down and write what you'd like to see happen for yourself.
Mhm.
The new thing today that you see out there a lot is manifesting.
Mhm.
Different people have different ways of doing it, but we all do it, whether we know it or not,
Yes.
right? We all have the power. The words we use generate all this stuff around us. We
Mhm.
do it every day. I mean, you and I are sitting here talking because we both made it happen using our language,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And we all do it. And it's
Mhm.
important that your story, right, that you're always working from it. So you know, like in doesn't make the boat go faster. In anything you're encountering, you have to make some kind of decision. It's either going to betray your story or it's going to support your story,
Mm.
right? And working from a story and your story of care, also vitally important. Your narrative.
That was profound. I love that statement. You're either going to betray your story or support your story. That's huge. That right there should be on a bumper sticker. I can see it driving down on the highway in DC. I'm like, not betraying my story, not today. So that's important. I think we don't put enough, or I won't say we, but some people are not putting enough time and energy focused in that area. And when you look at it from that perspective, it changes everything. I mean, how many times do we sit down and decide, let me write about what I'm going to do? We see vision boards. Yes. You see little quote statements, affirmations, but to sit down and write your story and what you want that story to look like. I mean, take a blank book and start filling the pages out, because the pages are blank going forward. You're the one filling them. But oftentimes we give our power and control to other people and forget that we're the ones that hold the pen. So very good stuff.
And
So
know that it's always changeable.
yes.
Always.
Yes.
Like I thought I'd have 3 kids. After I had one, I'm like, oh, why would I want 3 of these? Right. So we had 2. Right. So, it's it's always going to be changeable. But we talked about wanting to have kids, and that was part of the story. It was written down before we had kids.
Right.
So
Right.
so it's not like write it and go, oh my God, I have to do this. It's like, no, write it. It's like a business plan, right? You write it, and a year in, you go, okay, we got to change that. 2 years in, we got to change that. 3 years, but if you don't write it, then you have nothing that you can work on and work from. And it goes back to the statement you really liked. Am I supporting or betraying?
Absolutely. So Barry, please share with our listeners. We're coming to the end here. So share with our listeners where they can find you. Can they get a copy of your book from the website? All that good stuff. So where do our listeners go?
Great. So my name is Barry Jessurun. It's barryjessurun.com is one easy way to find me. The book is The Drunkard's Path. You Google that, that'll pop up. It's available where books are sold. Amazon is the easiest, but you can get it from other places as well. You can order it from your local bookstore if that's the way you like to do things. Like I mentioned, it is on Audible. It is me doing the speaking. So if you like the sound of my voice today and you think you want to hear more of it, then great. If not, I totally get it. And you'll find more about our restaurants at greenvalleyhospitality.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing your time with us today. We've appreciated all the wisdom you've shared. And for our listeners, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of Surviving the Human Experience. And until next time, be well and stay blessed.